Hello.
Good
So
morning.
Restream was delivering a new software update with a totally new flow of how to start the stream, and I was now figuring out. And the countdown was too short. There was an automation for the next scene, but it was good. I really like it. So good update. Looks a little bit like continuous delivery, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, but it'd be nice if you didn't have to figure it out right before a stream.
No, during the warm-up phase of the stream, you figure out, new controls, looks good. What are these buttons for? Let's press. Let's take a look if it works. Okay, cool. So, hello everyone. Hello Substack. Hello YouTube. Hello YouTube. Hello Twitch. Hello YouTube again. And hello LinkedIn. And hello LinkedIn. We have multiple channels today, and I hope we get all the comments in. And for basically to every time you are invited to toss us some feedback, like statements, questions, we will definitely discuss them. We have brought some time with us, and today it's all about continuous delivery, agentic coding, and everything. The good Bryan Finster here just brought. Actually, he was putting some time and effort into digging again into the things as a pioneer, right? And this is what I really like about that one. And it's an absolute joy to have him here with me today. And we are focusing on the aspects of the tech leadership aspects, the seniority aspects, the maturity aspects, and why CTOs should take a look into exactly those kind of things and where the advantages are. But for the people who might not know Bryan Finster yet, which is hard, but it's possible that some don't know him, right? So please give us a little bit of a brief introduction to who you are and what you do.
Hi. My last meeting with India was just over 5 hours ago, so I'm still waking up and getting caffeinated, but bear with me. I've been a developer for 3 decades now, doing enterprise software for many large organizations. The longest one, the one I'm most associated with, I think, is Walmart. People challenge me on things I talk about, but in real environments where things are really critical, it's really critical when downtime is thousands of dollars a minute. So yeah, I'm aware. The things I focus on is trying to remove all the pain I had for most of my career. Because most of my career, I delivered software like most people still do, and it really sucked. And then had the opportunity to go try to solve the problem of how do we deliver much more frequently, which meant I had to figure out how to remove all the sucks that we could. And learned a lot of lessons along the way, learned a lot about leadership. I learned a lot about why we do things instead of just we do the thing, and why we shouldn't do things that way anymore. Also had a lot of really good mentors in the DevOps community, and I spent a lot of time today trying to pay that forward and help everybody else remove their suck, because life should not be as painful as it was for me for most of my career.
I really like how you put your blog, the headlines as well, right? This is remove the suck from your system, these kind of things. It is very the generation before me style, right? So our generation still use that terminology. It's not that common anymore, but it's refreshing to see they still like kicking.
I forget how old you are, Adrian, but I'm Gen X, and we're the last feral generation.
I'm Exennial actually, so I'm the transition into the next. So I was basically the generation when we were 16, and the first flat race were there, and we were the guys experiencing things like Ultima Online back then. So the first MMOs, this kind of generation we were, right? So pioneering the modern way of using internet, actually. So we are still the same generation, just at the other end.
I was in college when the MIT Coffee Cam came out on the first web browser. It was so cool. For me, the internet, when I was starting in college, the internet was, Usenet, and being able to like chat over terminal on the green screen with my friends in another college. It was so cool,
Yeah, green screens, white screens. The people who had green screens, it was more colorful than the black and white screens. It was just another color, but always like, whoa. I knew that there were several computers here or guys who had those green screens, those built-in one piece computers, like
the Wise terminal plugged into the VAX. Oh yeah, that was my life, man.
Exactly. But I started more with Atari ST and C64. That was actually my real rig. I got those things from my father, who had a little bit of problem with his shiny object syndrome and bought everything and was not using it. So it landed on my desk as a child. And I was like, oh, I'm 8 years old. I can barely read. And I have an English C64 basic manual. Let's start to program something. That was how I started to program. So,
yeah.
Right. And that was quite fun, but mostly because I wanted to start games on C64, and you needed to use terminal for that. So it was, without typing, you wouldn't be able to actually start a game, which was a no-no for a little boy like me back then. So same generation, interesting. So yeah, cool. So people are now dripping in. That's a good thing. So that's Bryan Finster. I think the people who joining mainly the stream should know me, right? So I'm actually 42 years old, just to have a number right now. So I am one of the older generation people as well. So I was always a developer, even though I wasn't starting my professional career as one. Then I switched back to correct this problem, but it was actually not that bad to have another what was media domain, right? So I am in reality a media engineer with IT specialization. So I'm not a typical, I'm not a studied programmer like this. So it's not well. And I was now 19 years self-employed as a tech person, right? So that's what I'm doing, entrepreneurial stuff. And I love to talk about these things. I love to write about these things, and I love to mentor people. And that's the reason why I asked Bryan, because he told me that he has something new regarding continuous delivery, and I'm a big fan of continuous delivery. Not just a fan, I really live that. So for me, there is nothing else. I don't help anyone who says, I have something different than that. I don't help, because it's a waste of time, in my opinion. I don't do that anymore. That's it's a core. So CD is so fundamentally necessary, not only for software development, but for all processes of it, but especially specification for that. And you don't need to practice it like a Bible, but you need to understand the idea and the maturity pattern and the ownership pattern behind that. That's the reason why I love DevOps so much as well, the culture, not the new thing.
No, I think you're touching on something that I always try to get across to people. First, let me back up a little bit. You're talking about you're not a traditional developer. I'm a college dropout. I lacked sufficient motivation at the time, but I came into a profession. I've been dealing with computers since I was 10. When we had an IBM PC, I took computer classes in high school in the 80s, and was taking a computer engineering degree. So I had a computer background, but my professional career started because there was a company in Dallas, Texas that was a warehouse management software company, and they were trying an experiment. Was it easier to teach people programming, or was it easier to teach people the business who were programmers? And so they hired a couple of people, me and another guy who had background in supply chain, because I've been managing a small warehouse at the time, who did have some computer background, and they ran us through boot camp, and we were both very successful. We're still both software engineers. My wife, also a software engineer. Mm-hmm. She has a degree that's 100% aligned with that. She has a major in romantic language and a minor in Japanese. So you can tell, software engineer, right? The important thing is the mindset, though. We're both problem solvers, and we're both focused on the problem we're trying to solve, and we're not focused on how beautiful the code is. We need clean code for maintenance reasons, but that's not the goal, right? Mm-hmm. The goal is the problem we're trying to solve, and continuous delivery is the best way I know how to solve that problem. People say that I'm just completely dogmatic about continuous delivery, and I'm not. I'm dogmatic about solving the business problem in the most efficient, effective way I can. And if you find me a better way to do it, I'll give up CD tomorrow. I don't care. It's just the most effective way I know.
Same for me. So when you were long enough, so for me, I was long enough in the space, and I was basically betting my own money on the processes we built. And when I basically saw that my money was going out of the window, my personal money was burning because we were stuck, basically stalling the entire process by hiding things in branches. That was the time when we started with subversions or SVN. Don't do that. Don't do SVN at all. That's another thing. Maybe in games, but not in software development, right? And then to Git, and it's a little bit like we started back then without all these things, and it worked. Then into there was this when Atlassian was pushing Git flow, everyone was Git flow. The clients were, the direct partners we were working, and all like we had all these railway plans there, in all had this line. What was this? The tower client, the Jira client. I forget how the clients were called. This Atlassian client where you had all these branches inside there, and they were so proud. The more branches, the more effective they felt. It's like that. That is an indicator how much work we have done, and they basically were all stuck.
One of the proudest moments of my life was when I helped fix Atlassian's documentation on GitFlow.
I think Atlassian was updating it that they don't recommend it anymore, isn't it?
Yeah. You know why? Because a friend of mine went to go work for Atlassian, and I said, "Hey, buddy, we can fix this now." And so he got that pushed through. And so it's because the two of us conspired to get that done.
Yeah. And that was really not the time where I think that we were very effective in what we do. So we tried. So that was when we started to work with corporate and these kind of things. And it seems logical to have that, but it was never working out. And we were, 8 years ago or something like that, we moved away from that again.
It seems reasonable from a management point of view, but when you actually get into the code and have to deal with it every day, it's not reasonable unless you have nothing else to compare to. That's the thing. And this is the problem we have, is we have a lot of management in the industry who's hasn't been close enough to the work to understand where the pain is. And they do things that seem reasonable. We also have a bunch of developers who've grown up without seeing what good looks like. Something me and my teammate talk about all the time about where I'm working now is, not understanding what good looks like, because they just think the pain is normal. And it doesn't have to be, the making the pain go away is what DevOps is about. And what continuous delivery helps uncover. This is the thing. A CD isn't the goal you're after. CD is the tool to find the pain so that you can make it go away. But it seems reasonable. And I don't blame people for where they are because of that, because of, the training. But, I do blame people who aren't willing to learn and listen about why that pain needs to go away. Especially, not if they're the people doing the work, but if they're the people who are impacting the people doing the work. I get really annoyed with them when they're just like, nope, we're just going to keep people in pain because I refuse to listen to any other way to do it.
That's a practice problem. So I'm a believer in good practice. So if you do a daily practice which works, and you are a disciplined person who's thinking of, I actually need to do this, I identify with a good process, and I don't want to be in a process where I feel pain, where I feel anxiety. It's typical Friday deployment thing, these kind of things, or I'm afraid to get to work to Monday, these kind of things. So I want to be in an environment where I feel comfortable working, even though the challenges are there. The challenges are fine. They need to be there in order to grow. But I need to be comfortable with doing those. And if I'm not comfortable with anything, it is more a sign that there is a lack of maturity, or the maturity level is actually not high, and there is no ownership. So the companies I'm working with in CTO fellowships is typical. The typical way kids, they have a lot of acceptance criteria predefined. Someone, you don't really know who was defining that, but that is what they work towards to in isolation. So there's a single developer in a team, in quotes, right? Working with a ticket. The next one is working with a ticket. The next one is working with a ticket. And they all have basically a unique and individual backlog of other tickets they basically need to produce down. And they all do that in branches. That doesn't work. That is not a practice. That is an artificial system, deadline driven, for people who are overwhelmed already. They don't develop any ownership.
There's a practical problem with that as well. I mean, so number one, there's the problem of, it seems reasonable, right? We're going to maximize utilization of these very expensive resources, right? I mean, not team members or humans, but resources. We're going to maximize their utilization, which is always dumb. But it also sets up the organization for failure from the point of view of now they got sick. Nobody else understands the backlog that they're working on. Nobody else can pick it up. So that work just won't get done. It sets up the problem of everybody has their things are going to get done, and everybody gets 80% of their things done, which means we're 80% done on everything and 100% done on nothing, which means we're not done with anything, instead of 80% of 100% done of 80%, right? Which is so much better. But it also ignores the fact that when you have somebody go off and document all these things and then throw it over the wall for people to go do the thing, there's assumptions in that documentation that don't translate with the documentation. Every time you have an information handoff, you have loss of fidelity. You have loss of context. You're not going to get all the context in the documentation. And even if you were able to, the amount of time you spent doing that would mean that you're costing money by not delivering that thing. This is something I talk about all the time just with teams on refining, even if they're working as a team, is you don't refine too much too early, because you document all these things when you refined it. And then in several weeks when you go look at it again, you've lost the context of that conversation. You don't remember what you talked about. And there's things missing that happened in the conversation that didn't get captured in the documentation. And so that I'm working on a book right now to talk about the supply chain of information problem we're trying to solve. That's what it is. We're trying to solve an information supply chain problem. And the time distance between when we capture information and when we try to use it, we've lost context, even if we were completely involved with that capturing the information.
That's the reason why asynchronous reviews don't really work, especially if you have days in between, right?
Well, and asynchronous reviews are even worse when you have these siloed. This is something there's group names in English, and I took German, but I don't remember we didn't cover this particular concept in German class. But in English, you've got group names for things, right? So you've got a murder of crows is a group of crows, right? Well, the group name for a bunch of developers with individual backlogs, I've coined a pandemonium of developers. Right? It's just complete chaos. So you've got all these people not helping each other, with no shared context between them. Nobody can effectively review the code. No one can help each other on each other's tasks because they're not aligned to the context of the work that's happening. It's again, we're maximizing utilization instead of maximizing for business outcomes. We're optimizing for HR instead of for the bottom line, and it's just a poor management technique that again seems reasonable if you're being graded on your ability to manage to the bell curve and trim the bottom 10% every quarter. But that's not the goal of a business.
It is absolutely not. So how to improve that. So that's basically the core topic of today, right? Because you have put some time and effort into getting, let's say, deeper into that topic, because we have, I think, one very specific aspect is that with 2025, right, we had this typical dawn of AI agents, right, where things like GPTs, better GPTs, code, Codex, these kind of things came into place and suddenly made it possible that you don't only have write the programmers, you have now machines coding alongside programmers. And that is, first of all, a lot of controversy, a lot of doubt, but there are many voices as well who said, oh, I can actually work with that quite well. So you were one of those. There are some others of those. I'm one of those. I'm working agentic, basically, mainly these days. But I think there was another aspect that you were seeing. So AI is a mirror. So if you implement AI into a process and it doesn't work, it is basically a very good sign that there is something wrong. Can you say a little bit about that? So as a warm up for the topic.
Yeah, well, so this again goes back to my experience with implementing CD for the first time, right? And so let's just cover that briefly. When we were piloting continuous delivery at Walmart, we thought it was a technical problem. We approached it as a well, and not just coding, but also architectural. We knew we had architecture reasons why we couldn't meet our goal of going from quarterly to daily delivery. And so we approached it from an architecture, platform, and coding point of view. How do we make sure we have good test automation? And that was really how we first approached it. And we weren't getting any traction at all until, again, I had to go get my hands dirty. I mean, my management was saying, "Hey, you guys are in this ivory tower talking about what the team should be doing, and they're not doing it, and so you're failing." I'm like, "Well, that's because you took us off the teams. Put me back on the tech lead as a team, and let's figure out the problem." And the problem was almost entirely not technical. The problem was how we were doing the work, and the effort of why can't I deliver today's work today shined a really bright spotlight on all the problems. And so we had to go fix those problems until we could deliver today's work today. I'm seeing the same exact thing happening with AI. It's far less gentle at identifying those problems. And that's really ironic for me to say, because CD was originally the most aggressive way I knew to uncover organizational dysfunction. AI is, where CD is like a spotlight, AI is like a solar flare.
It is really. You see even the results, the symptoms of that, you see all over social media, right?
Yeah, if you don't have those fundamental skills of, I don't trust any input coming in at all until I sanitize it. Now, this is just wisdom when you're talking about APIs. It's critical when you're talking about CD that we don't trust. I don't trust my code. I don't trust my teammates' code. I don't handle that with a whole bunch of process and review. I handle that by hardening my pipeline to catch the things that I don't trust, right? Because we make mistakes. AI makes mistakes a lot faster. The same mistakes we make. Exactly. Okay. I can depend on human validation of that even less. I have to go and identify where are the systemic issues occurring that cause these problems in the first place. How can I install the right fitness functions, guardrails, to prevent those systemic issues? And depend on heroics even less, because we depend a lot on personal heroics in this industry to keep things stable. And it falls apart when you start automating code generation. It just doesn't work anymore. We have to solve it with engineering, not heroics. And that's what AI does. And so if you already have these habits around CD, transitioning to agentic development is not very difficult, as long as you apply the same discipline around, we're going to know what we do before we do it. And that's the real key thing, right? Test-driven development isn't just, I'm going to write a unit test for a function. It's, I'm going to test we're going to run thought experiments against the requirements to see if these are even the right thing to do. And we're going to test that as a team by having conversations and define how we're going to validate that we actually did that. What's the hypothesis we're trying to prove or disprove? How are we going to validate that hypothesis? Let's write tests for that. And then let's code those tests to drive development. I mean, that's what continuous delivery makes you do. If you don't have those habits and you're trying to drive things with agents, you're going to just blow things up faster than you would normally. It's just that normally you just use heroics to catch the blow up before it went to production, hopefully. Now it's just not even feasible. And that's why I see people struggling, is most people don't have those habits of continuous delivery. We've been talking about CD for over a decade, since Jez and Dave published the book. I've been personally working this way since 2015. I wouldn't work any other way because of how safe it is, how much less drama it is. But a lot of people haven't been allowed to. They work in environments with functional silos. The industry has been organized against this process. And they don't think it's the right thing to do. They think Git flow is the safest thing to do because how well documented it is everywhere. And so they struggle, and they say, well, the tool's terrible. It's non-deterministic. You're non-deterministic. It's just non-deterministic faster than you are. And it's just your processes are terrible. You lack the correct workflow to do professional software engineering.
This
And
morning I was asked specifically about that. So how do you use Cloud Code, and how do you make sure that Cloud Code does understand multiple things like that? A little bit like the idea of, or the question was, Cloud Code is making mistakes. So if you give too much information, it sometimes loses something. And I told the person, you do the very same as a human. If you get too much stuff, you don't get to the result. You're not focused. So
yeah,
the point is that you need multiple steps. Like you need to review again and again until you get to the point that you are sure that you have done everything, that you have get proof for your hypothesis, as you said, right? So that you are where you are. That's still your issue as a human, and not the just half-hearted prompt something and you get the correct result out of it and measure AI by that, because that is laziness. That is absolute laziness, nothing else, right?
No. So let me say that everything I'm about to say is true as of March of 2026. And I say that because it wasn't true 6 months ago. I don't know what it's going to look like 6 months from now. The speed of I've had to come up with new ways to process information and learn because I'm learning things. Things are changing, and I'm having to learn faster than I ever have in my entire career. This is the most disruptive thing that's happened, and I started software development in 1980. I've seen a lot of change. Okay, and so I think the best term for this is context engineering. If you were really going to talk about the things you're talking about, but when we were trying to figure out continuous delivery for the first time, so number one, we didn't put together a tiger team, of 10x engineers who were all like tip top on testing and understood all these things to just show everybody what CD looks like. Well, no, we formed normal product teams. We transitioned from feature teams to product teams. I was made tech lead of a normal team, average team, and I mean dead average. I mean, I had college new graduates who should not have been in computer science and who should not have been hired as software developers who can barely develop, all the way up to people who've been doing it for a long time, right? But they also didn't know the business problem. And so I was a domain expert at supply chain, so I could help walk them through the business problem of every new feature we had coming in because I knew it by heart. And so what would I do? I would first say, okay, well, here's the goal of this feature we have. And I would even break down, here's the process flow at a high level of what we're trying to accomplish, so that they would have a broad context of what we were trying to accomplish. And then for the next story of that feature, we would go and break it down into acceptance criteria with behavior-driven development as a team. We would discuss it and say, here's the scenarios that we will do to describe the behaviors. Everybody had context at a low level of what that was. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, at a medium level. And then we break that down further into, okay, this service needs to be changed to implement this behavior. Okay, and here's the contract changes, here's the functional changes, this is what needs to happen. And then coding was just implementation. When I first started trying to use AI, first I thought it was complete garbage, by the way. I was writing a blog post about how it was complete garbage because the code was terrible coming into ChatGPT 3 years ago. And there's just the thought that you would use it for anything serious. I mean, my boss was using it to write haikus for his wife, but the thought that you'd use it for anything serious was just laughable. And then it started not being laughable. And then people I respected were really digging into it. I'm like, okay, this is probably going to be a thing. But I kept struggling to get anything real until I started, let's try this. Let's try what I was doing with the team. And then I started getting really positive results, setting the context, and I started just with, okay, here's some test scenarios. But the models have improved and my way of using it has evolved to now where it's like, okay, here's the goal we're trying to accomplish. Now let's collaborate together on how we're going to accomplish this goal. Give me a plan. Now, from the plan, let's go and collaborate on what the acceptance tests are going to be. And so all of my work is not on the code anymore. My work is on the planning and refining the test criteria we're going to use. And then letting it go and do that. But then I also don't trust it, because I don't trust me, I don't trust it, I don't trust anybody. So I learned to start throwing adversarial review with other agents, because only other agents can review at the speed that code can be generated. I can't do that. And I'm far more variable than defining a skill for, okay, I need a specialist on hexagonal architecture. I need a specialist on domain-driven design. I need a specialist on test architecture, right? And I build these specialist agents and to just hammer it, because the point of a continuous delivery pipeline, and all I'm doing is extending my CD pipeline, right? The point of a CD pipeline is not to deliver code. The point of a CD pipeline is to not deliver code unless it proves it should be delivered. And so I just hammer the thing with everything I can think of to validate that there's nothing broken. And then when there is something broken, I say, no, go fix what you broke. And I build trust in the process by not having any trust at all, except in the trust I encode into my pipelines to validate that artifact. And this again goes core to one of the things we talk about at Minimum CD, is that the pipeline is deterministic, even when you have non-deterministic input, which we have always had, right? And so these habits that I formed over the years from decades of pager pain, right? I care about ops a lot because of my pain in ops, right? These habits that I've formed, and other people who've worked this way have formed, have made it so that we can massively accelerate our ability to deliver. People who have not formed these habits aren't seeing this, they're seeing pain. And then they're just laughing at us and saying we're not professional because we're obviously just kind of YOLOing code. But no, we just know how to inspect things correctly. I know it was a lot, but
I give you a little question from Mitch Holscher. Hi, what's your guys' thoughts on pair programming in a team where everyone is using Claude?
Yeah, no. So I had this. This is one of those things where, just like continuous delivery, where it seems like Git flow is what we do because it's so well documented. But what you have to do is really think about what it is you're trying to do, instead of we do it because that's the way you do it. You have to, anytime you get a new platform, it's going to bring new capabilities. If you're not looking at how do we leverage these capabilities, if you look at it from the point of view, okay, how do I use this platform to do what I'm already doing? You failed. Okay, this is not just with AI. This goes all the way back to the earliest example I have is Black and Decker in the 60s with MRP systems and people platforming those and failing, but Black and Decker changed their processes to leverage the capabilities. Pair programming is one of those things where today I'm looking at everything that I know to be a good practice and saying, is it still a good practice with this platform? Okay, test-driven development, low level, not a good practice from my opinion in this platform. Acceptance test-driven development, absolutely required practice with this platform. Pair programming, still a good practice, but not in the way that we've classically done it, in my opinion, right?
How would you change it today?
Well, let me explain. So classic pair programming, you've got a navigator and you have a driver, and you rotate between navigator and driver. Those two people have different roles. The driver's job is implementation. They're tactical. The navigator's job is strategic. What is the goal we're after? And to tell the driver, I need you to do this. And the driver's focused on how we get it done. Now, the navigator will also give input, but that's the separation of duties in pair programming. It's tactical and strategic. With pair programming is still very effective with agents, except now we're mob programming. With mob programming, you have a driver, you have a navigator, and you have a peanut gallery, a chorus. And the chorus's job is to go out there and do research, give ideas. The navigator's job is to say, this is the decision I've made, and the driver's job is to implement. Well, with agents, the driver is a machine. It's a robot. And now you have two people collaborating on what that robot should do at the strategic level. They have better ideas than one person does at the strategic level, because a group is always smarter than an individual. When you're doing this, I wouldn't say that about politics, but
Could you imagine have one human, one strategic reviewing AI or engineering AI, and a driver AI?
Hopefully you've engineered the pipeline before you started development. This is another thing, right? Is that the pipelines always feature 0, and that includes all your review agents. And so you build out the pipeline for all the things that you know that you're probably going to have problems with, and then you harden those as new problems come along. You add more review. That's how you do CD. The pipelines always feature 0, but I think, in my opinion, having two people solving the problem together, and then and coming up with what we're going to tell the agents to go and implement the solution. That's how I think pair programming should work. Now, again, this March of 2026, it has to be in 6 months. It might change. We're all learning. This is the cool thing about it, though, is we're all learning all at the same time. If you're not learning about it and comparing notes with people, you're falling so far behind. And we're all going to be experts at something. You're trying to catch up, and the learning curve is steep because it's a new way of working, a new mindset, and you can't just slide into it. I'm sorry. It's not like a new language.
I think that discipline, so the original meaning of discipline, the Roman one, so disciplina, comes from discipulus, which is basically what we would say today, the eternal learner. So instead of thinking you have your degree, you are now a junior, a senior, or whatever, I would forget this. I would start to become, I am today that, and I want to be that tomorrow. So, it's a little bit like a different version of yourself, a better version of yourself tomorrow. I think this essential idea of becoming better every day becomes more important as a team. So that I think the big challenge is not as an individual developer. I think the challenge is to do that as a team, because if you have a team of 5 developers and 2 try to get forward and 3 try to stall where they are because they actually don't like AI, you have an issue. You have actually an issue, right?
There was a period of time in my career where I thought I was an expert developer. And I thought I was a senior. Then when I had to go and solve a new problem, I figured out that I wasn't, and I needed to become an expert learner. And I mean, what you say is true. If you're not focused on learning, if you're not right on the edge of I'm not sure what I'm doing, you're doing it wrong. And that's where I stay every single day. It's like, I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing, but I'm going to find out. I'm going to dig in. I'm going to learn, and then find the next thing. I'm not sure what I'm doing. I'm going to pretend I'm good at it until I am, and then go on and pretend I'm good at something else. And if you're not an expert learner, if you are saying I'm a senior engineer and I know exactly how it works, you don't. And honestly, with agentic development coming out, people who are experts at Java or experts at C# or if they're really good at that language, they're junior engineers. If they're not good at using agents, they are now juniors who are just old. They're old juniors. You've got to dig in, because this is an entirely new way of working, and it's not going away. It's only changing, and I can replace an expert at Java today. And I'm not an expert at Java. I don't need them. I need an expert problem solver is what I need.
And we need to talk to Restream about exactly that issue, because I tried to arrange the chat here in order to get that conversation flowing, and they have a software issue. So maybe they should watch it, the stream, and learn something from it. Anyway, but I totally agree. We have some follow-ups here with Mitch. So I asked him if that was answered, and he said yes, regarding a suggestion that we can replace the mob with more AI engineers, I would disagree.
I
We
disagree.
can get immediate feedback on teammates, not necessarily from AI.
It's the ideas we get from talking to each other that's so powerful from peer programming. And like Ryan said, sharing the mindset and why we come up with those ideas and learning from each other. But I don't learn anything from implementation, honestly. That's boring and it gets in the way. What I learn from is the outcomes. Are we closer to our goal or not? How do we get to that goal? How do we do it more effectively? And I honestly, I don't necessarily enjoy pairing with someone who's much junior than I am. I much more enjoy pairing with a peer where we're bouncing ideas off each other and challenging each other. But when we can do it at the level where we have somebody else generating the code and we can just focus on the problem, and that is so much joy.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that one of the issues I had before AI came along, so the years before that, is that I was a little bit frustrated that so many devs in my environment, my employees, other employees of other companies I'm working with, were so focused still on how do we write that function? Do we use that kind of loop or that kind of loop? Is, brackets, so snake case, these kind of ideas. Yes, it is a thing, but just have a convention and just live by that. So it's a little bit like that's not an issue. That is especially not an ongoing issue. But still, the people were like making problems or creating problems to have some problems, which are the biggest problems they have. So they can say, "Oh, I'm solving problems every day." In reality, they were not developing themselves as a team further, so forward. Basically,
Well,
that was missing thing.
You're implying there's an implication there that I think people might have the wrong takeaway as well, that the code doesn't matter anymore, right? Today, March 2026, the code still matters, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it will in 6 months, but right now the code still matters, right? And the reason why goes back to that context engineering thing that I touched on before, that these days, it's more important that code is well structured. It's more important that code is well documented. The names are meaningful. These things are more important because it helps with context management in the agents so that you don't spend a whole bunch of tokens trying to get something simple done. Mm-hmm. But what do I do about that? Do I spend a lot of time on code structure and naming things? No. I've got agents for that. I have an agent that all it does is say, are the names meaningful, and opens defects on other agents because the names aren't meaningful, right? Because I need to manage that context. I spend a lot of time these days on repositories, making sure the repository is organized well for Claude or Gemini. It's like, can you find things quickly? Yesterday, I was working through a legacy repository. I said, hey, I want you to go and create an index of things so that you know where to find things quickly while we're going to go and refactor this legacy application to make it better because it's coded by humans for 20 years and it's terrible, right? And so these things all matter quite a bit. It is a little frustrating that it's only now that we care. From a management point of view, it's only now that we care that things are well documented. It's only now that we really care about architecture because it just costs more money otherwise, because the cost was hidden before. It cost a lot of money. It cost more money before because I'm so much more expensive than AI, And there was something else, and I'm sure it'll come to me, that was related to that, but we'll go on. And when it comes back to me, I don't want to hold up while I'm going,
So we have no more comments. So by the way, you are, again, just toss comments. We all go through them. Maybe, so the topic was the page you were sending me, where you said you built something for your current environment, right? But you merge it a little bit with the minimum CD idea. Can you give us a little bit of a broad overview of what are you working today and why? So what is the why behind what you're doing right now?
Well, so, I'm not a consultant. That's not what I do. I'm an individual contributor. I'm a principal architect, but not an ivory tower architect. I'm a hands dirty architect, right? Working for a 50-year-old payment processing company that needs to modernize. And what I learned a while back, this goes back to lessons I learned along the way of trying to help teams with continuous delivery at Walmart, is how do you hack people? Because you have to hack people, because it's mostly a people problem, right? How do we deliver software better? It's 10% tooling and 90% people. And I learned a while back that if I like send an email or write something in Confluence, it doesn't matter. But if you have an external source you can point to, then people take it more seriously by default. And so at Walmart, I started blogging externally and then pointing people to the blog. I started, documenting things. I would give talks, point them to the talk. But it was focused on the internal problem I was trying to solve, not my external, people know who I am, right? And Minimum CD is, we started that for the same reason. That was a conference project at DevOps Enterprise Summit. We were trying to talk to our own companies and help other people. I'm doing the same thing now. It's like I've got a bunch of people that I need to help. I don't scale. I can't talk to each one of them individually. And an external resource is something that not only can they use, but other people can go and review and beat me up if they think it's wrong. So it's like the open source thing, right? Open source software is not worse than commercial software. In a lot of cases, it can be better if it's well used and people are opening defects against it. Documentation is the same way. Open defects on Minimum CD if you disagree. Mm-hmm. And so with agentic development coming in, and we're leaning in hard on using AI for every aspect of the business where I'm working now. But I'm terrified of developers diving in and using it for code without the background and context. And if they had that background and context, they wouldn't have hired me. Just frankly, that's why I'm here, is to help with that. And most companies don't. It's just the reality of it. It's mostly garbage out there.
But why is it? So why do you think there is garbage out there? So just to name it.
Well, again, I'm in the middle of trying to write a book, and I've been doing a lot of research about how did the industry get to the way it is. The industry, Microsoft has a lot to answer for making it popular to have functional silos. To commoditize the role of developer. When I started as a developer, I was everything. I talked to my customer directly, find out what customizations they needed to the software that my company provided. I would give them estimates, and my estimates mattered because that was time, which meant money, because there was an hourly rate on customization changes. Mm-hmm. I had to go and develop it. I did all the database work. I deployed it. I scheduled the installs with them because it required an outage in many cases. And I was the one getting woken up at night when things broke, not just for my customers that I worked with directly, but for all the customers we worked with that used our software. And so I was everything. And then in the 90s, Microsoft decided that was way too expensive to hire people who could do that. So what they did was they started siloing the roles into thin slices. So you had someone who was focused on product, you had someone who's focused on coding, someone focused on testing, you had people focused on support, And then that functional silo model, they wrote a book even about it, about how great it was, and people started adopting it. Walmart adopted it at one point. Well, they still do. We had to tear it down to accomplish CD in my area. But that destroyed the culture of the teams on Walmart when they adopted Microsoft's process, because we were everything, and then it just destroyed our ownership culture. And so because of that, most of the industry is organized that way, and so it's just garbage. You've broken the supply chain of information. You've broken your feedback loops. You've made it impossible. You've organized for poor quality. Mm-hmm. You can compensate for that poor quality organization if you're releasing Windows every 3 years. You can't do it if you're deploying to the cloud, every quarter, which is terrible. You definitely can't deploy to the cloud every day with that organization structure, because your information supply chain's garbage. And so to fix it, you've got to fix all of that, right? And so what do? Well, you hire people like me who know how to fix it. But that's why it's garbage out there. And that's why, but going back to, bringing in AI, if you're organized that way, AI will just amplify the dysfunction. Things will blow up really fast, and you can't compensate with heroics the way you are today. And you're using heroics. It's just hidden. It's just hidden in you think it's normal to have that level of heroics, and you can't with AI. And so I started building out Michael Kusters, who's also a big advocate for things like this. He coined a term I just latched onto as agentic continuous delivery. I went, yes, that's what it is. And so he contributed stuff, and I've contributed stuff to Under Minimum CD. If you go to beyond.minimumcd.org, I've brain dumped everything from Dojo Consortium, Minimum CD, and contributions from other people to help us with continuous delivery. But also there's a whole section just on agentic continuous delivery, talking about how to architect agentic pipelines that extend rules-based pipelines, the workflow around that people are now calling spec-driven development, but I would just call behavior-driven development. It's rapidly changing as we learn new things and add new information, because we're all learning at the same time. So it's what you see today might not be there tomorrow, I guarantee you. But because I have a CD pipeline for that as well, for updating my content. But I don't want people where I work to get harmed because they lack the background to use it safely. I need them to use these tools to accomplish our goals. And so I have to show them how to use it safely. So I'm brain dumping out there, let other people in the industry look at it, comment, improve it to help where I work. And
I have a question specifically. So when you use, I see ACD, that's probably the agentic one, right?
Yeah,
so when we work with, so any form of agentic work we do is heavily based, curated AI context. So every time we do something, every time we plan something, every time we review something, our context is curated in the very same moment, right? So we don't use a rag yet in our own thing. So we still can work with plain files, but we need to spend time on that. Those files are in between the sessions, in between the developers, and they are owned by everyone. And that is the way how we work. So I would be very interested, it works, by the way. I would be very interested in what is your take on making sure that we have shared context and how it's actually working. I thought I was reading something about ragging as well. So how are you actually doing that right now?
So you heard something about writing. I'm hang on. Yeah, ask the question again. I'm not sure I followed the question.
So how do you manage in the idea of agentic continuous delivery? How do you manage that everyone is working with the same AI context? So that is the very basic question.
Oh, well, so number one, yes, the code is important IP. The tests are more important IP, the test code. The test definitions we use are also important IP. Commit that to version control. The prompts that we use are not just simple commands, right? Mm-hmm. If you go look at a prompt for 2026, it's a complete set of instructions for where to go find what goal we're trying to accomplish, the reference material to go look at. It's here's where the feature files are for the acceptance tests. It's very terse but context rich at the same time. And so constructing a prompt correctly, I actually have agents to help me refine prompts to make sure that it's structured well for agents to read. but that's IP. You commit it to version control. There's a pattern. My teammate and he suggested it, and I think it's a really good one. Is have a .prompt folder in the repository where we just keep all of the prompts that we've used for each thing. Then I'll have, under documentation folder, I'll have a feature folder that'll have feature files in it, right? So that's all part of the repository. If you're doing continuous integration, we're not, unless we're pairing, we're rarely working on exactly the same thing. So we as a team, we can develop the prompts and the feature files, and then as individuals, we can go off and make sure they're implemented correctly and manage our team of agents that, we're now our team of teams. We have a team. We define what our individual teams are going to go do, and then I'm going to go manage my team, and it's going to go do it. And so that's how I think we should be working as teams. Is we come up with the ideas together. We document the ideas. We use agents to refine that documentation, and then we go and do.
So agentic, if I understand it correctly, in your sense, is to really use agents in basically every process. So in our process to plan, execute, review, test, everything.
When I'm working on my own, I will start with a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say, go do this. I'll say, here's the goal I'm trying to accomplish. Suggest a plan. Now, in some cases, I'll know what I want it to do, and I can, but if I tell it what to do, it will also lack context. So I'll still do it, even if I know exactly how I want to get it done. But in a lot of cases, especially the stuff I'm working on now, I won't necessarily know how, because it's something that I've never done before personally. And this is something else, is that there's so many things I've wanted to do in my past, but I didn't have the knowledge of that particular language or framework, and the time spent to learn that was more expensive than the thing I was trying to get done. And so I just didn't get it done, right? Now it doesn't matter.
Building svelte front ends with a lot of animations. Was that one?
Yeah, oh my God. Oh my God, there's a point in my existence. I wish I'd had AI back then when I was dealing with that. That was terrible. We finally got it solved. That was the most expensive UX component I've ever worked on in my life. But that's a story for another day. Thank you, Adrian, for helping me with that. But no, I mean, like simple tools to help things, or just stuff like, just things that I wanted to do for helping people visualize where problems were. I just didn't know how. I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't have the available resources to go do it for me. But now I do, as long as I can say, here's the goal. But I'll start with, here's my goal. Develop a plan for that, and then we'll collaborate on the plan. And I won't go and necessarily edit the plan directly. I will have a conversation, and it will edit the plan, right? And then we'll start getting finer and finer detail until I'm to the point where, like, okay, well, I agree with this first set of tests, implement this set of tests, right? But doing it the entire way through, I mean, people who think, oh, it's just autocomplete on steroids, this is how you do product management. If you just take it up a level, even to beyond the goal, is this even the right goal? Let's go look at what our competitors are doing that we're not doing. Let's go look at what other people are doing that might be a good idea, and brainstorm around, hey, I've got this, nifty idea. What do you think? What are other, let's see, let's go do some research on this. I can write blog posts real fast now because I have a research assistant to go out there and pull information. It's like, I remember a thing. They would normally take, Googling for stuff some of the stuff I remember. It's not widely written about. And so Google is really tough. But like the Black & Decker thing I was mentioning before, I wanted details on that. I've tried Googling it before and it just didn't work. But when I start talking to the agent about what I'm trying, oh yeah, here it is. Here's the reference material. I did that the other day on something. It's like, all right, here's the citations for why you want to keep code review small. And so I could link that in the blog post. It's like, here's the exact study that explained why you want to keep code review small and why it's not effective beyond a certain point, right? And so I'm using it all the way through, all the way to operations. Let's people. One of my favorites is, oh well, good luck trying to fix that code at 3 o'clock in the morning that you didn't write and you don't understand. Well, number one, that's been my job for decades, is fixing code at 3 o'clock in the morning that I didn't write and I don't understand because somebody else did, and I didn't see that code. I didn't review every line of code because somebody else on my team did. And that's just the job, right? But number two, my flow right now is, here's the error I'm getting, fix it, right? And then I'll go and watch the decisions it makes to see if I agree with the decisions. But the MTTR is so much lower because it can go, oh yeah, it's over here, or oh, we need to add logs so I can find it. Oh, now I find it. Here's the fix. Perfect. I validate the results and go to sleep, or validate the results and go on to the next thing, right? That I'm using it from birth to death through the entire SDLC. If you're focusing on, I can generate code really fast, you're, number one, not utilizing it to the extent that you should, and number two, being very, very dangerous.
There is a truth to it that coding was never really the bottleneck. There are some exceptions where you actually need to get something done. But if you're in a constant push of just code out, you do something business-wise wrong. That is one of the aspects. So I think that if we are in a good practice, if we think in continuous delivery, as it is defined on minimum CD, actually, right? If we do it that way, then and we use AI agents, the modern versions of it in a, let's say, in a mature way as a team, then we never get again into coding as a bottleneck. So because we can start to focus on what we need to do, why we want to do this, and have a way better understanding as a team. This is why I referred to the context as well, is that core code is oftentimes a partner I'm actually talking about an issue 80% of the time, maybe more than that. And the fix is then sometimes there is no fix. It's like, we don't even need to fix that. Yeah, okay. I was back then going into code, and today I have an engine which is going through all files, right, if it's necessary, and find me things I wasn't able to see as a human. Even with 10 humans, you wouldn't have seen this, what an AI is capable of doing. And that is what I really like.
Yeah, well, and let me just touch on something. People talk about how, oh yeah, it's good for Greenfield, but you don't want to use it for anything like legacy or important or anything. Yesterday, so there's a product I'm working on internally that I need to go and figure out what the domain model looks like, so I can try to find some issues. What in the domain architecture might be contributing some of the issues I'm seeing. There's over 200 repositories. Some of them are directly related to the domain. Some are support things, and some of them might not be related at all. They're just owned by this entire, it's just in this suite of repositories owned for this product, right? And I'm very new to the product. I don't know it. I don't know the language. It's C#. I've never coded C#. But what I could do was go and define a domain-driven design agent, make sure I agreed with what it was going to go look for, and tell it to go generate a domain diagram and highlight any issues it saw with the domain. 20 minutes later, I had a list of issues and a mermaid diagram of the domain. All the database connections, any sort of anti-patterns around service construction, service boundaries, all laid out in 20 minutes. It went through 207 repositories to give me that. That would have taken me weeks of effort. Meetings with people, God knows what else, right? And so it's if you know what you're trying to do and you know how to do that, right? You can get it done really, really fast. But again, it only amplifies your skills. It doesn't compensate for lack of skill.
How do you skill up? So you get into an organization, right? We had this traditional thing, right? Where we had the apprentice, then the junior, and then the journeymanship, which was the intermediate, and then we senior, which was the most experienced version of the normal IC. And there's the question now, how do you do that? How will this, in your opinion, evolve while you do something like ECD right now? So you have this agent, you need to control this agent to do something, and you are just starting in the job. How do you get these things together?
Well, there's two basic ways we've always skilled up, right? One is I accidentally figured it out on the job, either because, or didn't, based off of the problems I was working on right this second and the other people on the team. Or I went and tried to figure it out myself and found information and tried to apply it. Those are the two ways that we've always learned, right? Well, I mean, that's trying to shorten that learning curve so that you don't start with autocomplete and then work all the way through. I have a complete agentic Scrum team and I never look at the code anymore, which I'm almost never looking at the code anymore at this point. There's several steps in between. So I'm trying to help people shorten that curve. What did I do? I made sure that we had those steps well documented on the agentic CD portion of CD. Here's the constraint you're going to hit with this method. And then this next method clears that constraint. And then when you get to this method, here's the constraint you're going to hit. Mm-hmm. And how do you start clearing those? And and lay out that these are the different ways people are using AI today and the problems they experience at each level so that they can figure out how to short circuit that path and not have to go through every single level. People who want to find good information, that's, and learn on their own, that's how they do it. Your other option is to try to figure it out and hope that you will land on a team where you have people who know what they're doing with it, who can mentor you.
I think the mentoring aspect is quite important these days because it's different than it was before. Back then, you got the specific low-level task you could do, right? And the more experienced you became, the more tasks you got. Today, it's tempting to just go into, using an agent.
I've always hated that. I think that's the most ineffective way to grow a developer.
It is. But this is how the industry was doing that. That was an adoption of the old apprentice journeymanship thing. So do what you can do, but because that never actually, invoked ownership. It was not like, no, you could challenge juniors if you like. You could even, I had juniors, they were in the stream as well, Camilla back then, who was really doing the entire continuous delivery. It was pre-AI, but it was the entire delivery process with the client together, working with the client. Of course, not on architecture, but on things she could challenge herself in. And that's the point. I believe in challenge. So I think that you should challenge yourself. The point is, what many, let's say, teams I see out there, I'm seeing them right now, they basically try to shield away younger developers and say, yeah, AI is great, but you need to have experience for that. So we try to not get juniors anymore, try to only have seniors that they can use that. That's what I see as an issue.
We've had this problem in the industry forever. That your career trajectory depended a lot on the first team you landed on and the quality of the senior engineers on that team. And by quality, I don't mean about how well they code. I mean how well they grow more senior engineers. If you're a senior developer and you think your job is to be the best developer on the team, you're just a junior who can code well. Okay? A senior engineer's job is to clone themselves, to make themselves obsolete. Number one, you learn a lot by trying to grow somebody else. You find out where your gaps are so you can go and plug them. That's what I learned when I was trying to figure out CD. I was a chapter ahead of the team and acting like an expert, but also challenging everybody on the team to help me accomplish this goal so that I can learn what they all learned at the same time they were learning it so I could get the next chapter ahead, because my goal was to deliver a team that could do CD and I didn't know how to do it. I had to go and learn how. But to your point, I was also at the same time leveraging everybody's skills and not treating anybody different. Everybody on the team was a teammate, team member. Nobody got handed tasks based off of their level of experience. The expectation was if you didn't know how, you'd ask for help, and the team would help you, right? And that's how a team should operate: is that you're a junior engineer because you don't have the level of operational and teamwork and development experience to make good judgment calls in many cases. But you'll stay a junior if you don't ask questions, and you'll stay a junior if you're on a team where questions are discouraged. The goal.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I deep work. Don't ask me. I'm the senior here. Deep work. I need to do all the stuff, and you just shut up.
Figure it out, and when you completely fail, maybe I'll come help you. No. Let's.
Yeah, I'm prepared that you go home then. It's a little about that. That's not good. So I personally like to have some space. So a person should try to fix a problem by him or herself. But there is like I say often 15 minutes. So if you don't solve or don't understand the issue in 15 minutes, go to someone, and I expect that someone to help you, right? So there is no deep work prediction. So if you need deep work as a team, define spaces where you have that. But outside of that, you please work together as a team. Otherwise, it is no team. So I always have the metaphor of a soccer or football team. They play together on the field and not in isolation.
There's this thing about get stuff done, right? And in the lean world, it's limiting your whip, right? The concept really is that any piece of work that's closer to development than any other piece of work is more valuable than a piece of work that's further away from development from production. So like if anything in code review has more potential value than anything that's not ready for code review yet, right? And that's just the way it works because it's closer to being done. And your job as a team is to get things done. Okay. Now, so how does this play into what we're talking about with mentorship? When in the dojo, when we were, on the CD Sherpa team, when we were helping teams with continuous delivery, we would emphasize this thing that our job was, number one, there was no individual goals. The team had goals. And individuals on a team can't win if the team fails. So your job from a continuous integration workflow was you had one small thing you're trying to get done. Right? We didn't assume pair programming because most people didn't. We assumed you were not pair programming. You had one thing, and you had to do code review because it's a regulated environment. It's just the facts, right? So you have one small thing you're trying to get done, which is I have a small task. I got to get the test pass and integrate my code. To integrate my code, I have to raise a pull request for code review. We also assumed you weren't doing synchronous code review because most teams sadly don't. So what's your job? As soon as I raise a pull request, my job is to go find out, is there anything waiting on code review, and then review it. Because anything in code review is more important than any work that's that's on the backlog. That's the least valuable thing you can do. After you've finished any kind of code review you can get done, your next job is to go find out if anybody on the team is struggling with anything, scratching their head, see if anybody needs help. Because their work is in progress and is more valuable than anything on the backlog.
That was the original idea for staff engineers, to actually sit in the teams and help the teams getting things faster and getting the cornerstone, the facilitator idea. It is mainly lost in companies.
The stupidest manager I ever talked to is the one who was managing the team to how many tickets they closed and stack ranking the team for HR perspective on how many tickets they closed. So you had staff engineers focusing on ticket output instead of helping the team.
They're focusing on the ticket. That's the problem, not on the product, not on the process. And the interesting part, they were actually rewarded for that. Without there was no evidence that this actually brings forward the entire
higher bonus. They'll get a higher bonus because they go and cherry pick the easy tickets and get more tickets done. It was dumb from a business perspective. Easy for you. But this is the thing. It's like your job on a team is to help the team deliver, not to finish your thing. The team is going to finish the thing. What's the most valuable thing? Let's get it finished. And so this mentorship as a team is so critical, especially with things like this, because it's so much faster to break things with agents if you don't understand the right way to work and you're not helping each other on the team and not learning from each other and finding better ways to get it done as a team. Because I guarantee you that, the dot prompt folder idea that Kelly suggested, I hadn't thought of it. I've been doing some other stuff, but I actually hadn't thought about it. Well, why don't we keep the prompts? Oh yeah, duh. Why don't we keep the prompts? Right. So
I like, as a metaphor, I like from Goldratt, the end-on call. So as soon as something is not going through, the pipeline stops. We solve the problem, which would be the get the stuff out. We have something in review, get it out. Then we continue with the regular work. Then you don't build up inventory. You don't build up a second backlog with reviews, right? Then everyone is working on the actual backlog, but the backlog of reviews.
Yeah, minimum CD is one of the core things. And when the pipeline's red, feature work stops. We swarm the pipeline. I've had so many people push back on me on that. Well, no. That's just whoever broke it needs to go fix it, and the rest of us can continue working. No. Number one, you broke it. Your team broke it because you didn't put the right safeguards in your pre-commit process to prevent it from being broken. Your team broke it, and it's impossible for you to validate any change you've made while it's broken, because that's the pipeline's job, is to validate the change. And your little branch doesn't matter. What's integrated in the trunk matters. And so if the pipeline's red, you can't validate your work, and all you're doing is piling up more and more unvalidated work. You stop, you fix the pipeline as a team, and then figure out why was the pipeline allowed to break, and then what do we add to the pipeline to make it harder to break next time. That's how that works. And this is the mindset you have to have for CD. You have to have it for agents. You don't say, "Oh, it broke something. It's terrible." It's like, how is it? Be curious. How is it able to do that? What guardrails can we put in place? What fitness functions can we add to make it harder for us to do that in the future? Okay, go and do that. It's the same mindset. We're constantly hardening our pipelines. And your pipeline isn't just deploy to prod. Your pipeline starts with the hypothesis. So what automation can we put in place through the entire SDLC, the entire continuous delivery pipeline, to identify issues early? I saw a hack right after I joined the company I worked for, where they had compliance documents that they had. They were using ChatGPT to go and write acceptance tests against the compliance documents to find holes in the compliance documents they were handed, so that they could open defects against the compliance documents. Imagine the power of that.
Is it, in your experience? So we are talking, I think, since 3 or 4 years about that on stream already, right? It's quite a while. Do you think there was a change back then? Do you see more and more companies adopting that stance, or do you still see it's an issue out there?
What I see is reports about how companies are adopting AI and just being added to the list of failed adoption. Okay. If the enterprise adoption, that it's remarkable when an enterprise can adopt it well. I'm trying to make sure that we're on the list of exemplars of how it can be done correctly. I think that's important to demonstrate. I know we can if we, have the right overall process in place, right organizational structure, all the things you need for CD. We can adopt it well. But I did a talk at PlatformCon a few years ago called "Why Platforms Don't Matter." And AI is just a platform. That's all it is. It's a platform that brings new capabilities, and the same problems for platform adoption that has always happened are happening again. It's just boringly repetitive. People buy a platform, hand it to people to use. They don't evaluate what new capabilities might be available. They don't look at how they're working and see if how they're working needs to change to take advantage of those new capabilities. They don't bother to train people beyond here's the basics, and then they wonder why the things fail. Going back to the resource management platforms, the planning platforms that came out in the 60s, Black & Decker was the first one to dive into. They didn't just say, here's a new platform and figure out, hey, we've got this automation now. We can just fire most of our planners that are spending and doing all this planning by paper. They said, hey, you know what? We can plan faster now instead of just planning for manufacturing and what materials we need for it for the next month and try to figure out that demand and figure out the supply and all that. We can plan weekly, daily. We can get shorter feedback loops on our supply and demand so we have less waste in the flow. Instead of just firing people, we can just have people plan more efficiently and effectively. And so they changed their entire process to take advantage of that platform. Other companies, they just said, hey, it's a great way to reduce headcount. And they didn't, in the best case, they didn't see any improvement because they were still planning monthly. Yeah, the planning might be slightly more accurate, but they were still planning monthly. And they still had all that inventory cost and waste from, overproduction of things they didn't need or underproduction. Some companies went bankrupt trying to apply it because their processes, the processes weren't aligned with that at all. Their data was garbage. They had all these other problems, systemic issues that made it so that they went out of business trying to apply these things. And it's the same thing is happening with AI. The same thing happened with continuous delivery platforms. It's just boringly repetitive. And if you actually study the history of supply chain and manufacturing and how it applies to software development, and it becomes like, oh, that's obvious, right? And so if people are adopting AI as a platform without evaluating how they're working, evaluating their organizational structure for clean flow of information, evaluating how work is done on the ground, training the people on better methods, how to use the thing effectively, establishing groups to help those people, they're going to fail. We're doing all those things. We're focusing heavily on all those things. Other people aren't, and they're gonna fail. And people will say, "Oh, it doesn't work in the enterprise." No, it doesn't work in your enterprise because your enterprise is garbage.
So, if anyone is thinking about these things, I think minimumcd.org was always a good source to start with. So when I'm talking to CTOs and engineering managers or even seniors who say, how can I actually start? That is a great starting point. You should know this page, in my opinion. And I really like the one page you edit because ACD, right? So agentic continuous delivery. And you edit the agentic development learning. Wait a second, I should just share it. Let me a Chrome tab, agentic. That one should be shown right now. There we are again. Can I maximize that? Maximize. It's not maximized.
I mean, it's big on my screen.
Okay. Anyway, so that page is really cool because what I like about this page is, first of all, you see that you were basically putting time and effort into the entire idea of how to actually work in an agentic continuous delivery, right?
Yeah.
So you have the aspect of auto-completion, prompt function, chat-driven development. That's so cool. So, of course, we don't have to go through every aspect. There's probably something we discussed then with Dennis on our Tech Journey stream a little bit more in detail. These kind of things, for example, you listen or hear about that on LinkedIn, how people do that. And every time they do that, it is personally with themselves in their cloud code. What I really like is focuses on the company and the teams to get this done, like reviewer, reviewer intent. Every standard post on LinkedIn doesn't include reviewing. It is only I do that thing on my side project because my employer don't want me to do that in my company. And I think that actually get that into your team and do that as a team. This is what I wanted to share, right?
And something to be clear here too is those reviewer boxes, those are agents, but they're agents that we as a team design, right? Because Dave Farley did a video recently about signal processing theory, and that if you're trying to analyze a signal that you're your sample rate has to be at least double the highest frequency to properly analyze that signal. And he was applying it to code and code review, and how, in the past, it was already ineffective because the sample rate was at best equal to the production rate of code. But it falls apart completely when you're generating code, because you can't manually sample the code as fast as the code is being generated automatically. And so what do? You engineer a solution for it. And that's what I've been working on for a while, is, okay, code review is completely ineffective. We have to engineer a solution, or we just need to stop using agents to generate code. One of the two. And so I started trying to engineer a solution. So I came up with, okay, let's start. And other people are, it's not just me. Other people have in parallel doing the same thing, and then we're comparing notes and improving each other. I'll even go and look at somebody else's blog post or about how they've done something, and then say, hey, Claude, compare what they're doing to what I'm doing and suggest improvements on what I'm doing. And let's go and generate agents for that. Right? It's not even, I'm not even hand coding the agents or coming up with the ideas on my own. I'm just leveraging the ideas from the industry and say, okay, compare what they're doing to what I'm doing. Is what I'm doing better or worse to achieve our goals? How do I steal their stuff too? Right? I mean, that's how I learn now. Because I learned by implementing their thing really fast, because I can get really fast feedback loops on their thing, whether I like it or not, instead of spending all the time to go and try to develop it myself, then see if I like it.
What are the 4 prompting disciplines?
Oh, there's a lot of content out here.
just a rough overview, because the discipline, additional,
and
strategic at the same time. So it is extremely important.
Yeah. So number one, having that clear idea up front of this is what we're trying to, this is the goal, and talking about what and not how. Especially with Claude, Claude really is Claude's the one I use most today, and that might change tomorrow because it's based off enterprise pricing models. But Claude's what I use most today, and explaining your goal clearly to Claude is much better than explaining how. I want you to code this function. Here's my overall goal, and writing that clearly and concisely. All right. Don't say please. Please costs 2 tokens. Okay. Just be direct. Here is the goal I'm trying to accomplish. This also goes back all the way to the lean thought that I was pushing when we were doing behavior-driven development. It's like, when you write a scenario, before you walk away from that scenario, remove every word that's not required to make that scenario clear, because it just adds cognitive load to understanding a test scenario for the human trying to implement it, right? Remove any unnecessary words. Do the same with the prompt. If it's unnecessary words, remove it. I actually have an agent that'll go out there. Number one, I have a rule for Claude to be concise when responding to me, because it costs tokens to have unnecessary words. Be concise. And I'll have an agent to go out there and make sure that my prompts are as lean as possible, right? It's like, let's lean this out, because it costs less for me to lean out the prompt than for you to implement a prompt that's not. So learning how to do that, putting guardrails in place to make sure we have a clear prompt with clear goals. Explaining how and you can't just give a goal without understanding how you did it correctly, because there's the story about the guy's production database got deleted. It wasn't because, and also the agent covering up its tracks. It wasn't because the agent was malicious. Go watch 2010 Odyssey 2, right? Hal killed all the astronauts because it was the most direct way for him to solve an insolvable problem, where he was given an instruction with no clear acceptance criteria that was in conflict with another instruction. And so he just took the path to success, which was to kill all the astronauts. And he met his goal. So agents do the same thing. They'll take the quickest path to success. And so you have to define the guardrails. And that could be in the prompt. It could be a set of skills or rules that you have defined that are just the general rules and that you have to follow. And then what the success criteria look like. How do I measure that I did that correctly?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the same thing that you would do with a human, right? It's like, here's the goal. Here's how I measure I achieve the goal. Go implement.
Context engineering. So we mentioned that already. How would you define it from your side? How do you handle context as a team?
Making sure you have the right amount of information and the right place and the right time, just like you would do with humans, right? This is why throwing requirements over the wall at teams is a terrible solution. That the team needs to develop what the requirements are as a team. Have that documented at the right level for the goal, for the task you're trying to accomplish. And it's the same thing here. It's that whole process of going from idea down to acceptance test, making sure that it has the information it needs to go and do what it needs to do. There's some cases where I'll have a Claude session linking 2 or 3 repositories together so it can pull information from where it needs to accomplish something we need to do in this service.
I really like that. So for me, that context engineering is not only in software engineering, it is for my entire PKMS, so my personal knowledge actually is managed by that as well, by the very same technique I use I use for that Git anyway in Obsidian, and I use that as well for any form, or we use that as well for any form of sharing the knowledge in between, because in fact that is knowledge, right? That is knowledge how we do things, how we don't do things, what was working and how we solved it. And intelligent guardrails, all these kind of things are inside the very curated part. That is so important, that curated part, right? So that is part of the ownership of the team. So curation, which means that if I make a change and I don't want to have something like that happen anymore, I need to make sure that is part of the context, so that this will never be forgotten again, right? Not only in tests, right? In tests, it should be reflected there as well, but as well in the pre-context. So that shouldn't be the case anymore. If you have that knowledge right now, make sure that the next one, even if that person isn't present today, will not make the same mistake. And the AI will say, yeah, okay, I see that. And don't waffle, as you said, make it as clear as possible with as less tokens as necessary to not create that noise, because the more stuff you have, the unclearer the result will become. That's what people refer to hallucination, with no hallucination. It's just either too less information or too much information.
Well, there's something, and also there's some technical stuff behind this people need to understand. The current guidance in general is that there's a certain level of tokens in a context window for any model, and you don't want to exceed 40% of that.
Exactly.
Because
it starts degrading.
Right? Yeah, the results start degrading rapidly after you exceed 40% of that context window. And then if you go too far, and I witnessed this early on, I learned this the hard way early on, just playing with ChatGPT, that the longer the conversation went on, it started having amnesia. So not only were the results being less accurate, but it would start forgetting things because I was exceeding the context window. Now, models today, like Claude, will start auto-compressing, but that takes a while. If you see it starting to compress the conversation, you've already gone too far. What you need to do, this goes back to continuous integration workflow. You work in small batches. You've one focused task with the right amount of information to get the task done, clear the context, and go to the next task. It's the same, and the last thing you do before you clear the context, commit, push, right? Integrate the code, go to the next task, and just use your CI workflow that you should have been using anyway. It's just that the consequences of not doing it now isn't just that the code is delayed the integration to the team. It's that the quality starts going down and you start getting more and more errors.
I had the same discussion often, like there were open chats already like close to the you saw the percentage of the rest of the token window, you see, and the developer was trying to keep that and saying, oh, I need the information, I need code in that moment to understand where we are. And I asked that, is that not represented in your context file? Not yet. And then I told it, right now what you do is the last thing you ask it is to wrap up everything and put it back, or make sure that you have it start context, then you clear and you start again from the context fresh at this point.
And I'm building out a complete agentic development team that has all this stuff automated into it. And I keep adding new features to this development team because what I'm trying to do is platform this so I can deploy it internally to help everybody else. So they don't have to build this entire architecture themselves. But it manages context. The other thing it does is it automatically manages its long-term memory and files. I'm also looking at incorporating Steve Yeggie's beads into that flow, because beads is like memories plus you can queue up a bunch of tasks. So go implement one task, clear its memory, implement another task, clear its memory, right? And just automate that so you don't have to remember it. And this is, again, going back to continuous delivery. If it hurts, do it more until you figure out how to automate it so it doesn't hurt anymore.
Do you automate that by the pipeline reading the prompt? You said you had the prompts, right? Stored. You had the changes. You had maybe the briefings. How do you automate that?
Orchestrator agent whose job is to have the minimum level of context it needs to delegate tasks to other agents. Those can be parallel coding agents, review agents, wherever we are in the task. And then its job is to just filter that context down and to manage that context window for all the other agents. My job is to make sure that it has the right information to do that.
Okay, that's cool. So that's the reason, I think, why you said, and I agree. I think you said that is that we work like this today, right? But we don't know if we work like this next year or in 2 or 3 years, because things change fast. But right now, for us, it is very similar how we work, right? It is maybe not that automated to the level that you do, but it's still a lot of manual curating stuff. But it's the same idea behind that.
Yeah, it could be that the models get to the point where I don't have to worry about context windows, right? We used to have to really worry about memory when we were writing software.
Yes.
We have to do all sorts of things to write code that was memory efficient instead of efficient to read. Now we don't, because memory is cheap, and it could change. In 6 months, it could be that you've got a 1 billion token context window, and you'll just never have to worry about it. You can write an entire application.
You can still crash your Mac by scrolling down your conversations in LinkedIn 10 times because of bad memory management. Well, it's not crashing a Mac, but it's crashing your
right now, one of the biggest concerns is locking up my machine by having too many parallel agents running.
That's another thing. So I think we will see more local LLMs in the future. So the machines become better, and you try to localize more things. Well, I think that will be one thing, that we have more management on the actual IDE. So the IDE will be extended with LLM, not just having everything cloud. I think that is definitely a push right now, even though it is questionable from the outcome right now, even with Gwen Coder or something like that. In my opinion, still Claude Code outperforms when you just take it in the API version, but it doesn't perform in cost, so it's pretty expensive. So
it's pretty expensive, but it's incredibly powerful. The other thing I want to touch on real quick is you don't use agents for everything. Mm-hmm. Okay. If there's a tool that exists that's based on, if you're trying to solve a rule-based validation, use a rule-based tool, not AI, okay? Because using AI for a rule-based problem is like trying to drive a nail with a CNC machine.
Can you give an example for a specific thing you mean?
Linting, security scanning, testing. Use the tools that currently exist that already do that. But then I've got, if you look in the pipeline architecture section of this, it includes the normal pipeline architecture. This is outside the agentic CD area, but it includes normal pipeline architecture. But then it also talks about new things that you can add to your pipelines that you could never do before that agents enable. And it has a whole section about agents can improve this validation, or agents are completely unnecessary for this validation, or you can only do this validation with agents or humans, right? And so only apply AI when it's a good idea. Don't apply AI when you already have a tool that'll get that, when you already have automation in place that'll do it. If you can use a bash script, use a bash script. Have AI.
I had it as well. It's like when you have a lot of actions the AI should do to code, like iterations or something like that, it makes more sense that the AI, together with you, build the bash scripts you actually just run against your code base, and then take a look at the outcome and optimize that, then actually let the AI do all the work, because that, first of all, takes long, it is costly, and it is not very effective because of token windows, because you need
there's a lot of cross-referencing links in this Beyond page, Beyond site, right? There's no way I can manage that myself. I've got an agent out there that'll go and validate that we're cross-linking things correctly. It'll go and say, okay, well, it'll say, okay, this glossary term is linked everywhere it needs to be used. These page references are correct. But the way it'll go do that is it'll go, like I had to go, and it was doing a direct referential anchor tag, but that was incredibly fragile because I had to go and refactor things to make it easier to. I have a tech writing agent that went and said, okay, well, if we restructure this way, it'll be easier for people to find. So I said, okay, we'll go restructure all the pages to sort the menu better. There was a 400 file change that ate up a whole morning's worth of tokens. But in the process, I discovered the way I was linking was just super fragile. I hadn't been using Hugo shortcodes well. And I said, go replace all the anchor tags with the Hugo shortcodes so we don't have to do that ever again. So what did it do? It wrote a Python script to go do it. And then executed the Python script, right? Mm-hmm. You should be doing the same thing. If it can be done mechanically, create the mechanical method to do it, and then either tell the agent to use the mechanical method or run the mechanical method in the pipeline, right? But don't tell an agent to go do it manually, like physically. That's just a waste of tokens.
Yeah, in my very first video I've made regarding Cloud Code, it was more than a year ago. It was a next 14 to 15 migration. And I saw that the Cloud Code was constantly creating scripts, which were basically executing the scripts, then taking a look at the output. And it was stunning to see it was actually creating bash scripts in a way I wouldn't have done it myself. So there was a specific power inside that the AI can create those scripts, right? So I'm, first of all, not a big bash person. I'm not a shell person, right? So I can do that, but it doesn't look very good, right? So if that thing is doing that for me and I can review the code and say, yeah, that's actually a good idea, I can read it, just execute it, and I follow the process while it's executing, and I'm reviewing together with the AI. The entire migration was basically done in 2 context windows, which would have taken me in that large code base much, much longer, right? And I was very stunned about the results, because every file needs to be touched, there needs to be new directives and these kind of things. And you've done that yourself, of course, but I think there was 800 changes or something, file changes in files, right? And I was stunned. I was literally stunned back then. I was sitting on the couch. I was really stunned. I was recording myself. And that was the first time I saw that pattern actually working. And I agree, the mechanical part, and it was not me, my idea, it was actually the idea of Cloud Code itself, to do it that way, because it said it's too many files, I need to do it by that. And this is what I really liked about the tooling, that AI said, I am here an agent, but I want to use tooling. I want to create tools for that instead of just doing that all myself. Yeah. And I like that approach. It's a very good one. So we're getting to an end now. Do you have anything you want to share regarding?
So let's go down to intent real quick, because I think that's important. So this is where you define the rules about, just how we want to do things. This could be architecture. This could be how things are structured, naming conventions, whatever. I mean, I think the most basic one of these is that if I'm coding a node service, Claude tends to default to Axios, right, for HTTP client, and now there's a native.
Most developers do still.
Well, but I try to minimize, because I've worked in secure environments. I minimize my dependencies because that's attack surface area. No matter how good the dependency is, that's just added attack surface area. And so I will try to use native whenever possible. Well, now there's the native node client for that, You don't have to bring in a dependency. And so I'll define in my architectural constraints when I'm defining the I'm setting the basic rules for this repository. I'll say, we're going to use functional programming, not the fake OO that you can do now with JavaScript. We're going to use native functions for things. And I'll just set the architectural constraints for the purpose we're trying to get done. That's an example of this.
Mm-hmm. So you basically tell the AI up front when you want to implement something, and it should plan for you. It shouldn't go into, hey, just wildly do the package JSON full. It's basically like avoid package JSON filling up as much as possible. This is what you mean by that. So you basically give the engineering's intent.
Yeah, or I'll tell it we're going to do behavior-driven development, but we're going to use Vitest. Don't bring in Cucumber, right? I don't want Cucumber. It's too cumbersome. We don't need it. We can just use our unit test framework. Just use Vitest, but we're going to do behavior-driven development. Here's the feature file, because I don't need to glue things together, because I have an agent to validate that the feature file is totally covered by tests.
Where do you do that? Is it code space? Is it something you do in the CloudMD?
Yeah, so for the gross repository, I'll either create rule files for bigger rules, because it's not going to implement all the time. But for the basic architecture stuff, I'm like, yeah, here's the goal we're trying to accomplish. This is what this repository is for, and here's the architectural constraints, and here's where to find some more information.
Good one. Last one. Specification engineering, the new ceiling.
Yeah, let's behavior development. Let's behavior driven. Here's the feature. How do you construct a feature file? Here's the goal we're trying to accomplish. That's the feature definition. And here are the scenarios we're going to walk through to accomplish that goal. It's behavior driven development.
Mm-hmm. And you put that, basically those 4 things are part of what you would call the big prompt before? Is it like a sequence of prompts you basically
you walk through? So
how do you do that?
To be the general term at this point. It's not just a question you ask or something. It's the general term for the instructions that you're giving. And so it's going to be several files that contain this, right? And I'm using agents to help me refine all these as I go. But yeah, so I'll have feature files for each feature that I'm trying to implement. That's IP. I'll have the architectural constraints that's configured in the repository in the Claude file or the agent.md or whatever. That's part of your IP. And all of these they're all part of the repository, just like the documentation is part of the repository, just like the tests are part of the repository. These are all the things that make up the artifact that you're delivering. And so they're all going to be in there where everybody can see them, share them, and understand them.
That's cool. Good. Anything you want to share regarding the new updates you have made, the work you have done in the community?
Hey, if you haven't seen Minimum CD in the last 6 months, you should go look, because there's been a major upgrade to try to help people. Not only, I think if you click on the not sure where to start box,
what?
Diagnose your team and not sure to start, they're the same thing. My wife said, this is the problem we had in the dojo when we were putting all the information together, was we had all these playbooks to help people, but you had to know what problem you had to find the right playbook to go and solve the problem. So we still had to go and diagnose the team before the playbooks were really useful. And so I started asking Claude to help me organize things. So here's the problem we're trying to solve. Here's the symptoms that people are seeing. And here's anti-patterns and some solutions. How can we get them from here to here? And it came up with this list of find your symptom. And I keep adding to this. My ask for everybody is, you have problems. You don't necessarily know what the solutions are, or you do know what the solutions are, but you have problems, and that problem isn't represented here. open an issue on this repository. Just click on a GitHub logo at the top, open an issue, and add that problem, and we'll make sure and get that problem added to this list. I want people to be able to navigate through. The other thing is learn the fundamentals of expressing what we're going to do and how to test that we got that accomplished before you start coding with AI. The recommended path I have for using AI is start using AI if you're being handed requirements to open defects in the requirements. If AI can't understand it, you shouldn't be coding it by hand at all. Just don't. The next thing is use AI to help remove drag from the flow. How do we start using AI to automate the pain away in our delivery, in the entire process? Do that, because the only people impacted by defects there are you, not your customers, not your users. And you can refine, you can learn how to use AI while you're improving how you're delivering work. When you get there, when you're comfortable there, then start using AI to deliver code. Mm-hmm. This is a learning process that means that you deliver value immediately without risk.
Little last question from my side to you. Wait a second. How does it work now? Stop, hide, replace, stop. Ah, that one. Okay. New functions, new buttons. Just a hypothetical question now. So we are now more and more getting into agentic coding, maybe as an individual, maybe as a team, but everyone is talking about that. How will it be in 2 or 3 years from now? Can we still code manually as a team, or will we go so deep into that we are totally dependent on AI? What do you think?
Dude, I haven't touched assembler since 1992, 1991. I don't, and it was 386 assembler. I don't remember. I remember the concepts. I remember how memory is impacted by function calls, that sort of thing. I can't read assembler anymore. Mm-hmm. I haven't touched Pascal since 1989, and it was Turbo Pascal, not the abomination that Pascal became later. I can't write Pascal. I haven't touched Informix 4GL since 2014. I don't know. There was a developer. Somebody reached out to me to talk to his son's a junior in high school who deeply interested in this career path and wanted to know where AI was taking us. I was like, dude, I have no idea. I said, I don't even know what 6 months from now looks like, much less 3 years. I don't know. But the constant in my career has been change. I've always, all I've experienced my entire career is change. It's going to keep changing. The one thing that's remained constant other than change is that the problem has always been how to solve the problem with the best tools, most efficient way we can, because we're professional developers, not hobbyists. There's always going to be a need for code because not all problems are solved, and only solved problems things that agents can help with. But what the career looks like for most developers, I have no idea. It'll be an interesting journey.
Mm-hmm. I personally think that AI will be something which we become very dependent on. I'm pretty sure about that.
Well, I don't worry about that, but I'm also dependent on the cloud. So
we are, of course, that it is like if we wouldn't have a cloud right now, first of all, there wouldn't be enough data centers available for where people could actually host things. We needed to rebuild the infrastructure. Things have changed, of course, but I think the special thing about AI is a new dynamic. There is a new dynamic of how things evolve, right? So it's not like plateaus anymore. It's not like we have the internet, then we have the smartphones, then we have, we have VR or something like that. There was several plateaus of things, right?
This is not an incremental improvement. This is a fundamental change that's going to impact much more than how we write code.
Exactly. That's what I mean. It actually affects so many other things as well in the industry that I think we all cannot really predict it, and it would be a lie if we do it, because even the creators of AI, or the big companies, big corps, they don't really know, I think, what actually going to happen. Well, I think the best thing we can do is stay disciplined, make sure we work as a team, make sure, as you said, we solve problems, because that is something which won't change.
No.
I can't imagine that this change, right? This is the fundamentals. It is more important than ever to focus on the fundamentals, to become a professional engineer more than ever. Not the I'm a good programmer. That fades. Right?
I want to be clear what I mean by that too about professional engineering. That's kind of vague. And one thing you work with agents is vague doesn't work. Doesn't work with people. You have to. Engineering isn't about how well you code. Engineering is about deeply understanding the problem you're trying to solve, how you knew how to solve it, and the trade-offs in between that you have to make, because engineering is about balancing forces, not about I'm going to make it perfect. There's no perfect bridge. All bridges are a balance of compromise. Okay. And that's what being and doing that efficiently and effectively is what being a professional engineer is about. So it's being a software engineer, not about writing code. It's about efficiently and effectively solving a deeply understood problem.
That's cool. I really enjoy that conversation. It was a very interesting one. Looking for a follow-up, Dennis, on OTJ when we go deeper into the mechanics of that one. Sure. But that was a very, very good overview today about the why. So what you just said, why. And I think that many can relate to that. Even though we have a very special time today to do that, it was basically noon here in Germany and probably very early for you, right? But there will be a recording for everyone who basically came late or something like that. There will be an entire podcast article about that. I will give all the references, everything will be there, so you can enjoy the entire conversation, and let us know if you have any feedback, any questions, and kind of that, because we really believe in continuous delivery, and probably, as you saw, we really put time and effort into learning and understanding how AI is actually a usable addition and extension to that. And yeah, thanks so much, Bryan, for sharing all the information and putting the work into the manifest of that, because many people talking about things, just a few actually doing something which is an artifact for others, so that they can actually use that for themselves.
One tip I have for everybody, okay, is that the fastest way to learn anything is to try to teach something you barely know. Okay, and that's what that ACD section of Minimum CD is me trying to teach something I barely know. So.
I wait for the day when ACD becomes ACD for anything which probably like that. So next time about ZMF, right? Next episode.
Yeah.
Your most favorite topic, right? So it's the
opposite topic. I'm proud to say that the ZMF released an actual book that you can actually, you can hand it to somebody that you trust to not try to implement it, because it's very detailed about how to implement scaled agile DevOps maturity framework in your organization.
Yeah, it's a negative example. It's an inversion of everything, right? So a little bit, but that's a I actually need to laugh every time when I read this acronym, right? But anyway, that's probably a Gen X thing, right? To have that kind of fun was when we grew up. The fun, not everyone of the more younger generations really understand that fun thing, or maybe a little bit. I don't know. It is like that. Okay. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks, Bryan. Then see you next week, 11th, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I'll see you next time. I appreciate it.